Hello everyone, my name is Marion Knebel. I'm from Germany, and I kind of started my DITA journey, I think in 2008, much in the same way like Justina did, working for a company where we needed to introduce structured authoring and change order processes. And then I figured out pretty soon that I need help. Hired a consultant company called Parsons Communication. And once we were done setting up the whole DITA environment and making everything nice, I switched jobs and actually worked for that company. Have worked for that company since then, which is now called Parsons AG. So we are a service provider for technical communication based in Hamburg, in Germany. And yeah, we do a lot of DITA consulting, creating authoring environments, publishing pipelines, but also introducing CCMSs and content delivery platforms, things like that. So nowadays we have a lot of companies that need solutions to publish content from different sources in a content delivery environment, published with multiple systems, and connect content based on metadata. So that's where iiRDS comes into play. Just a little bit of background for those of you who attend DITA Europe regularly. In 2018, I think it was 2018 or was it 2017, I'm not entirely sure. We gave a presentation at DITA Europe where we introduced a showcase, a DITA plugin that creates iiRDS packages. The idea was back then to not simply have this as a showcase, but to make it market ready, to make it available to other people who want to create iiRDS content. But then, things happen. People kept asking us, when are you going to do this? When are you going to work on this again? Unfortunately, there never was really time. There hadn't been a project, a real world project where we really needed it for, and so we didn't get it done. But the good news is finally now in 2024, there will be a version. Actually, it will probably go live within the next month or so. Now, I've mentioned iiRDS, but I'm quite aware that some of you might not even know what iiRDS is or what it stands for. It's a complex topic, and I'll give a very brief introduction. Just can I have a quick show of hands who of you don't have any idea what iiRDS is or only know the name or something? Okay, right, so there are quite a few people. So that's great. You still won't have a very good idea about it after this presentation because I want to focus on the DITA part, but iiRDS, it's a bit of a complicated abbreviation. It stands for Intelligent Information Request and Delivery Standard. It's a standard that is being developed by the iiRDS consortium, which is actually part of tekom, which again then is the German Association for Technical Communication. So they realized this need several years back, and so there's this consortium where we have a lot of manufacturers in there, but also bigger companies that create content, and together they created a standard that facilitates the data exchange and data retrieval of technical communication content based on metadata. So the idea is that you can take this format and the standard data that is delivered with it, and combine content from different systems, from different manufacturers, integrate supply documentation, facilitate content delivery, or integrate, for example, also machines with technical documentation content. For example, if you have an error code on a machine, and that you can connect it easily to the instructions in the corresponding technical documentation. So what iiRDS does, it standardizes metadata for technical documentation, and it also provides a common package format. So it has a technical solution for delivering content with this metadata. So basically, this is what it looks like in the end. It's a zip file, although it has the file ending iiRDS. And in this zip file, you will find two things. There is an RDF file with the metadata, and then there's the content. And the content can be anything. Very often it's HTML or PDF or both. but in theory it could be anything. It doesn't really matter. It's just linked to the metadata in the RDF file, and then you just have to have an application that can read this content. So you could also use this to exchange data content from between different systems. For example, if you wanted to integrate a supplier documentation in your CCMS and for whatever reason don't want to take DITA just natively, but you also need metadata, then you could use this. But the most common use case is content delivery platforms. So this is kind of an overview of the metadata model of iiRDS. We don't have the time to go into all the details. What I just wanted to do is highlight the areas where we have already a very good overlap with DITA, information that is already there in forms of element types, attributes, or metadata elements. So obviously, iiRDS, at the very top level, there's the iiRDS package, and below that we have a document, and the document has topics, and it also knows fragments if you need them. Then we have product metadata, where you have the product names often, which is called the product variant in iiRDS. You have things like components, and then you also have other stuff like product features, which you don't have natively in DITA out of the box. The topic type is something, I don't know if you can read it, but iiRDS knows troubleshooting, form, reference, concept, learning, and task. So we can see, except for the form, everything is already available in DITA as well. Qualification is something that we have in DITA. We have the attributes and the metadata elements for roles, so we can derive that from those. And then there's also administrative metadata, which is things like creation date, modification date, publication date, things like that. Okay. iiRDS metadata, I said it before, it's modeled in RDF, for those of you who don't know what that is. That stands for Resource Description Framework, and it's a W3C specification, and it's a formal language to define ontologies. So that's important. iiRDS is all about ontologies, not just trees of metadata, not just taxonomies, but about ontologies. It defines classes, properties, and individuals, and has the standardized vocabulary. But also it has extension points, so you can add your own vocabulary, you can add your own classes and your own values. So for instance, with a product metadata, it's quite obvious you need to define your own product names and your own components and whatnot. But then also, if you wanted to have more document types or things like that, you can always add your own instances. So in RDF, as I said, because it's an ontology, we have resources and we have statements about these resources. And those statements are always subject, predicate, object, or triples as we call them. As a definition, RDF is an abstract model, but it has several serializations into defined formats, one of them being XML, and RDF XML is also what is used by iiRDS. And I'm quite glad that we are a bit ahead of time, because that means in the end I can show you an example, I hope. So, how do we get from DITA to iiRDS, and is this a loving relationship? Now, actually, this one I already presented in 2017 or 18. Why would we use DITA? Is DITA a good fit? And we think, yes, it is. For content delivery, we need a classification of metadata. We need taxonomies. We need a controlled vocabulary for metadata. Also, we need not huge documents. We need granular information. We need them chunked into topics. And we need also classified metadata, but also different information types that we can query. And everything has to be structured. And the great thing is, most of this is fulfilled by DITA. We have metadata. We have controlled vocabulary using subject schemes, so that's a great help. We have topics, we have maps, different information types in there, and we already have a toolkit that gives us transformation options to different formats. So that's a good situation that we are in. And this is what the toolchain can look like. It's actually pretty straightforward. On the authoring side, we have our normal DITA process. We write topics, maps, and so on. And we can create PDF from that. We can have any publication pattern we want and then add an iiRDS transformation. If we want to use this format, for example, as an exchange format to go into the content delivery, where we can then use this metadata to search for content, to filter, also for navigation, and to combine content from different sources. Now, authoring, and that's I think one of the best news. Back in 2018, in our first approach, the idea was, well, if iiRDS has a specific vocabulary, we use specific metadata. So we specialized a few metadata elements and some attributes and gave them an iiRDS prefix because we thought, well, then we already know this is for iiRDS. But since then, lessons learned, we realized, okay, that doesn't really work. People want to write the content. They have other use cases. They write their content for other publication scenarios, and they don't want to have to do anything on top of that in order to get to this exchange format. So we wanted to have it more simple and to allow people to just use DITA as it is and to make it as simple as possible. So what we now do with this current version of the plugin is it supports just plain vanilla DITA or any customized doc type. So specializations are no problem, because everything is process based on class attributes, and if you find something specialized, it will just use the basic class to process. And the next step then is we have this iiRDS plugin, and just because he couldn't be here today, that guy that you see at the top right, that's Martin Kreuzer from Empolis. Empolis, I don't know if you're familiar with the company, they also have their CCMS and content delivery solutions, and they are big into working with knowledge graphs. And so together with us, we designed this new version of the plugin, but he was responsible for the implementation, so don't ask me anything about the Java classes or whatever. I'm not too much into that. From our side, we then did all the testing and the documentation, and designed it together with him. But I can relay any questions regarding the implementation to him. As requirements, we did this for DITA-OT 3.7 because we weren't ready to say yet that we wanted to also support DITA 2.0 and for some other reasons. But we did some tests with 4.1. It worked fine. We just can't guarantee it at this time. Also, we need Java 8 or higher, but that's usually not a problem. What this plugin then does is it transforms DITA maps or individual topics. So I'm not sure what the use case is for having individual topics, but you can do that if you want, or if you can just take a route map and process that. And the result is then an iiRDS 1.2 package, and the output format is always HTML. So that's kind of a simplified version of the processing pipeline. So we start after pre-processing. There's no changes to the default pre-processing of the DITA-OT. So the good news is all the references have already been resolved, the filtering has been done, and we just take whatever we find in there. So it means if there's anything regarding propagation and inheritance of metadata that we don't like, then we have a problem because we are just relying on the DITA-OT there. Although we do provide an extension point, so this could be changed if it needed to. In the next step then, after pre-processing, we take the pre-processed XML and map semantic elements that we have, like the topic types, or the metadata elements that we find, and several attributes to iiRDS resources in the RDF file. We also need to generate unique identifiers, so-called IRIs, which is the internationalized form of the URI. I love all these abbreviations. And also we create a directory structure, because in RDF, in this iiRDS, we don't have like this map anymore, but we have a directory structure that reflects the structure that we find in the DITA map so that it can be used for navigation purposes in any consuming application. So once the metadata extraction is complete, the default HTML transformation runs and creates HTML files, which are called in iiRDS then renditions. So you could, in theory, have an RDF file that has an HTML rendition as well as a PDF rendition of a topic, but from this plugin, at the moment, we just get HTML. And in the end, everything is packaged together into the zip archive with a file ending iiRDS. So metadata extraction, what happens? I already said in RDF, everything is called an iiRDS resource. At the top level, we have a package, an iiRDS package, and then we have the iiRDS document, which represents the root map, if there is one. If not, that's missing. The document type, we have, I think, a number of, I don't know how many document types there are in iiRDS, but because we don't have this information in DITA out of the box, the current solution is to just set it to operating instruction. So right now, everything you get out of DITA is called an operating instruction. And then, as I said, for each topic graph that we find in the root map, one directory node is created. Yeah, I already mentioned this in pre-processing. Everything that is done in pre-processing is then available. Everything else would have to be configured. We don't do any custom filtering. We don't do any normalization of values. If you spell it different in different contexts, you will have multiple values. If you have a subject schema that provides additional labels, that won't be there. It's just a naked attribute value. So this is an overview, and I hope you can read it from back there, of the kind of metadata that we are currently able to map. So for the DITA map, we get the document type. We have currently support for topics of type topic, task, concept, and reference. Everything else is mapped to iiRDS topic. Short descriptions are integrated if they are available on the topic. We get the titles from the map and the topics. We can evaluate the language. Then we have prod name elements or product attributes, both of which are going into product variant. With audience, it's the same. If we just have the audience attribute, we only get iiRDS role. But if we also have the audience element, which has a type attribute and an experience level, then we can also map those. Yeah, and components are just components. We have a copyright, and then we have the administrative metadata, which we can also map to iiRDS. And finally, because we need them for navigation, we can do topic heads and nav titles, or the nav title elements are only evaluated in specific contexts. It's all, if you want details about that, once it's publicly available, the details are in the documentation. Then I said in iiRDS, unique identifiers are important. It's a requirement. Topics with different metadata must also always have a unique identifier. And that's one thing, they have to be unique. And the other thing is that you want them stable, right? If you process the same map again and again, you basically want the same result in metadata unless the content changes. So that means, for instance, you have one topic, and you have different content in there because you do have different variants or you have different languages and you process that topic, then it gets the same IRI every time unless the content is different. So if you filter something out, a different hash is generated and you get a different IRI. If you have a different language, the content is different, you get a different IRI. And the one thing that then stays stable across different variants and across different languages is the topic ID, which we use as an information object, which can then be used by the content delivery system to know that if I have one topic in one language, I have the same topic in a different language. If I have the same information object, I know it's the same content and I can switch between them. Yeah, I said if we have time, we go into the details in the RDF. This is a typical example of such a triplet. On the left-hand side, here below I have this unique identifier or something which can be a document or a topic, and this has the relation is part of package, and then on the right hand side you have the IRI of the corresponding package. Similar on the next example with a topic, you have a topic IRI which has a topic type, and that's then set to iiRDS tekom DE iiRDS generic task. And here another example for a topic. You have also multiple different relations. For example, you have this has rendition, which then points to the HTML file as a source. Or for instance, you could also have relates to qualification and give it the value administrator from the actual topic. Maybe a bit less abstract here. One very short example. Some of you in this room might be familiar with this sample content, which has been around for a while on the internet. So we have a user guide with the language English. It has a copyright from 2015 to Gnostics Research Inc. It has a created date, it has a revised date, and it has an audience attribute of type administrator with job maintaining experience level expert, and we have a product name, which is mobile view. And for simplification, I put mobile view in here directly, but it also works if you use keyrefs, conrefs, and those kind of things. So no worries about that. In the RDF, then, we might get the following result. We have a package, which at the top level, also gets this unique identifier, which is random. So we can't control that. So anytime you generate a new package, it gets a new identifier. It then has this node for iiRDS document, which already has a date of creation based on the created element. It has a date of last modification. It has a document type. It has the copyrights, and then the role and the qualification. Okay, so what happens if what you see is not what you want to see, or you need, and you have additional requirements, you want to change something? The most basic use case is you want to change your HTML output because you want to have your own CSS in here. You want to have your own CI because you're publishing to a system that doesn't supply its own look and feel. So basically what you can do, you can use any parameter that's already available for the HTML5 transformation. You can include it in the iiRDS transformation. It supports all of those, so that's quite easy. The next thing that you can do is you can use AND extension points that are pre-configured to perform additional pre-processing, for example. So before the metadata is extracted in your pre-processed DITA content, whatever you want to do in there, you can, before you then extract the metadata. And then in addition to that, we have two Java interfaces that you can then implement if you want to change metadata extraction. So how to get from your DITA content to your iiRDS if you have additional elements or attributes that you want to process, if you want to use different values, if you want to have a mapping in between where you map the actual attribute values from DITA to something else in iiRDS, or you want to influence how those unique IDs are generated because, I don't know, for instance, you want to have your company name in there, or you want to have something that's language independent. Say you have your metadata values are all not all in English. So for your English content, you have English values like administrator and expert, but in your French, German, or Chinese version, you have translated values for those. But if you wanted to have them language agnostic in your iiRDS package, then you would have to implement your own interface. Yeah, but you can do a lot with that. And the good news is, it's also everything is described in the documentation. I think it's quite extensive. For a DITA plugin, we tried to do a good job to give you a lot of help on how to use this plugin. Okay, so what's next? Actually, my last slide. We're actually starting final review of the plugin by the iiRDS consortium in the next weeks. I'm not sure how long it'll take them. And then afterwards, the plugin will also be made available via the DITA plugin registry. And the sources will also be made available publicly under an open source license. And so if anyone wants to contribute on further development, you're happily invited to that, and the iiRDS consortium will have to manage that. Okay, so that's it. Last night. I think you're probably hungry, but maybe you have some questions before. No one. Everyone's hungry. Okay, then thank you very much, and